Vincent van Gogh, the famous Dutch painter, painted for just 10 years of his life. In that short time, he created more than 2,000 pieces of work, including more than 800 oil paintings. But during his lifetime, he sold only one painting. That was it. One sale, no fame, no fortune. Then Van Gogh died at the age of 37. His paintings were then not considered valuable. They were rolled up, stacked, stored. People did not care much or pay them any attention. What changed was not the paintings. What changed was the story. Welcome to Storytellers and Alchemists, when we re-enchant the world one story at a time. I'm Amira, and today we'll talk about the power of story. After Van Gogh's death, his brother Theo tried to promote the work. He did not have much success, and Theo died just 6 months after his brother. The paintings were then inherited by Theo's wife, Joanna, Vincent's sister in law. Joanna, now a young widow, found herself with no money or stream of income. All she inherited was hundreds of Vincent's paintings and drawings, along with thousands of letters from Vincent to Theo. Now, this was the key. We might think the value was in the paintings, but Joanna was smart enough to realize that the real value lies in those letters, those stories. Joanna devoted her life to tell Vincent's story. She told the story of a man who painted not for money or fame, but because he had to. She published Vincent's letters, revealing his depth, sensitivity, longings, and artistic intentions. She framed his life not as madness or mental illness, but as a deep human suffering intertwined with talent and creativity. As she organized exhibitions across Europe, she was preserving and explaining Vincent's work. She insisted that people see the work through the lens of his life, his suffering, his reflections, and soul searching. Slowly, something shifted. The world was finally given a doorway into the soul behind the brush. The paintings were no longer just images of sunflowers, bedrooms, or night skies. They became traces of longing, devotion, loneliness, hope, faith, exhaustion, and love. They became human. People saw a human being trying to express or perhaps process his feelings and experiences that they could relate to as they reflected something deep in their own soul, in every human soul. Over time, Van Gogh became not only a symbol of the misunderstood genius or the archetype of the suffering artist, but also a bridge between art and inner life, between art and devotion and creativity and beauty. People recognize themselves in his struggle to belong, to be understood, to make meaning, to stay tender in a harsh world. His story touched something ancient and familiar, the quiet suffering most of us carry within. In November 2022, one of those same paintings, The Orchid of Cypresses, was sold in New York for $117.2 million. Same paint, same canvas, but different story. Nothing about the object changed, but once a story was attached, value followed. Not a random story, but a real human story. For good or for bad, stories do not just explain the world, they reshape it. The canvas stayed the same, the story changed. And when stories change, value changes. This is the power of story. Think of all the stories that shape our life today. The stories flowing through social media, the stories repeated in the news, the stories woven through marketing and advertisement. In our modern consumer culture, stories are often carefully engineered. Marketers build brand stories to hook our attention, attract our emotion, and shape our desires. A product becomes more than a product, it becomes a lifestyle, an identity, a promise. And it is not only companies who use the stories this way, Political movement also build powerful narratives, stories that highlight certain fears, reinforce certain identities, or sometimes deepen divisions and polarization. In the fast moving world of digital media and recently AI, stories are often simplified into headlines, sound bites, and viral posts. Algorithms quickly learn that outrage and fear keep people engaged, so the stories most likely to spread are often the ones that provoke anger, confirm our biases, or keep us scrolling. Stories can illuminate the world, but it also can quietly manipulate it. This is why learning to see the stories around us may be one of the most important forms of awareness we can develop. Because once we begin to notice the stories around us, we start to realize that much of what we call reality is actually our own interpretation. So, I want to leave you today with three takeaways. First, awakening. Stories are everywhere. They surround us, guide us, persuade us, and sometimes sweep us along without our noticing. The first step is simple awareness. If we live on autopilot, mindlessly and aimlessly passing through life, we allow those people's story to shape us, for good or bad, consciously or unconsciously. So we need to pause and ask what story is being told here, and just as important, who benefits from this story. The second takeaway, the story we tell ourselves. Perhaps the most powerful story is not the one told by marketer or social media or politicians. It is the story we run into our minds, the story we tell about ourselves, who we think we are, what we believe we deserve or not deserve, what we believe is possible or impossible. That quiet inner narrative can shape our choices, our courage, our relationship, and the direction of our life. Vincent van Gogh lived most of his life inside a story that the world told about him, that his work did not matter, that he did not matter. He let his mental illness define him, yet he kept painting. He could not stop. In some quiet way, something inside him was trying to tell a different story. This perceived mental illness was, in fact, his genius. But he allowed his life, his paintings, to be interpreted through that story of worthlessness until Joanna, his sister in law, chose to tell a different story. And the world began to see differently. Because the stories we repeat to ourselves often become the lives we end up living, it is worth asking, what story am I telling about myself? And is that story helping me to grow or quietly holding me back? Is it helping me to be a better, more joyful human being? Or is it making me more miserable or spiteful? This leads us to the third takeaway. We have the choice. Stories will always surround us, but awareness gives us something powerful. It gives us the ability to choose. The word for choice in Arabic is ikhtiyar, which comes from the root of khair, which means goodness. This, in a way, suggests that a true choice is not merely something as selecting between options. It is choosing what is better, what is good, what is life giving. What stories do we choose to keep, and which stories do we choose to release? Joanna, Van Gogh's sister in law, who inherited his paintings, made such a choice. She chose to tell a different story about the painter behind the paintings, a story of a human struggle and a search for connection and meaning. And that story touched people's heart because, in many ways, it is a story of every human being. When she restored the human story behind the paintings, people began to see their beauty and meaning. We have the same possibility in our lives because we are not just characters inside the stories of our lives. We are in a way, we are the authors of the story. We have the choice. Until we meet again, may the stories you encounter guide you back to the quiet wisdom within. And if you feel called, share this with someone you might think they need a little wonder in their life today.